Sarah was not born into an easy life. Every day for her started before the sun came up and ended long after the city went quiet. She was a cleaner in one of the largest companies in town. People often walked past her without noticing, but she noticed everything: the dust, the stains, the things people left behind. For Sarah, cleaning was not just a job, it was survival. Her life was heavy with responsibility. Her mother was sick and needed regular medicine, and her younger brother was still in school. Sarah was the only one who could provide for them. She worked during the day at a small cafe, and at night she came to the company's tall glass building to clean the endless floors. Her body was tired, but her heart pushed her forward. She carried her family on her shoulders, even though her own dreams were left behind years ago. On this particular night, the air outside was cold. Sarah wrapped her old shawl tightly around her as she entered the building. The guards knew her by now. She always smiled politely, even when her eyes looked tired. Inside, the lights were bright, and the halls felt empty. To others, the office looked glamorous, but to Sarah, it was just another battlefield she had to face. She carried her cleaning tools from one floor to another, wiping desks, washing floors, and arranging files that careless employees left scattered. As the hours passed, her legs began to ache, her back grew stiff, and her eyelids felt heavier and heavier. But she didn't complain. She never complained. She told herself, "Just a little more, Sarah. You have to stay strong for your mother and brother." But strength has limits. That night, her body decided to fight against her will. Around midnight, Sarah sat down on a chair in one of the meeting rooms to rest for a moment. She placed her cleaning cloth in her lap and closed her eyes, just for a second. She thought she would only take a short breath, maybe count to 5. But her exhaustion was so deep that her body betrayed her. Her head leaned back, her breathing slowed, and soon she drifted into sleep. For the first time in years, Sarah let her guard down inside her workplace. She looked almost peaceful, like a child who finally found rest after a long day. Her soft hair fell over her face, her tired hands still holding the cloth. What Sarah did not know was that this night was different from all the others. The CEO of the company, Mr. David, had returned to the office unexpectedly. He was a man known for his strict nature and sharp mind. Most employees feared him, and no one dared to be careless when he was around. He entered the building quietly, planning to pick up some important files before an early meeting the next morning. As he walked through the empty hallways, he noticed a light still on in the meeting room. Curious, he stepped closer. And then he stopped. There she was, Sarah, the cleaner, fast asleep on the chair. At first, he frowned. How dare she sleep during her duty, he thought. Any other boss might have shouted, woken her up, and fired her on the spot. But something made him pause. He looked closer. Her face was not careless, it was exhausted. There were faint dark circles under her eyes, and her uniform looked worn out from years of use. Mr. David stood silently, watching her for a moment. He was not used to seeing such vulnerability inside his office. Employees usually tried to impress him, to look their best. But this woman, this cleaner, looked broken, yet still fighting. He wondered, why is she here so late? Why does she look so tired? What kind of life does she return to after leaving this building? Sarah, of course, had no idea that her life was about to change. She was lost in her brief sleep, unaware that the most powerful man in the company was standing just a few steps behind her. The ticking of the clock echoed in the silent room. For Mr. David, it felt like time had slowed down. He could wake her up right now, end her job, and she would never enter this building again. Or, he could wait. And so, he chose to wait. Sarah slept peacefully for a few more minutes, but when she finally opened her eyes, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly looked around, afraid someone had seen her weakness. She didn't see Mr. David behind her. He had stepped back into the shadows, silently observing. Sarah jumped up, brushed her uniform, and whispered to herself, "No, you can't let this happen again. You can't risk your job. You must stay awake, Sarah." She forced herself to continue working, her body trembling with fatigue but her hands moving quickly across the tables. Mr. David's eyes followed her silently, his mind filled with questions he had never asked about the people who worked under him. For the first time, he felt a strange curiosity. He wanted to know who she really was, and why her struggle looked so deep. What Sarah thought was a simple mistake, a nap during work, was in fact the beginning of something far greater. Her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. The night felt unusually long inside the tall glass building. Sarah, now fully awake after her brief mistake, worked quickly to finish the remaining floors. She didn't know that every move she made was being quietly observed. Hidden in the shadows of the hallway, Mr. David, the company's CEO, stood silently with his sharp eyes fixed on her. He had come for files, but now he found himself strangely unable to leave. Something about the cleaner's silent struggle caught his attention. She was not just sweeping or wiping tables, she was fighting against sleep, against weakness, against life itself. Mr. David was not a man who wasted time on small details. He had built his empire through strict discipline, hard work, and a heart that many believed was made of stone. Employees whispered stories about him, how he fired people for being late, how he never forgave mistakes, and how he valued results over emotions. But tonight, something inside him softened, even if he did not admit it. He watched Sarah drag her bucket to another room. Her steps were heavy, her shoulders bent. Yet her hands moved carefully, not missing a single corner. She hummed softly to herself, maybe to stay awake, maybe to keep her mind from drowning in fatigue. Her voice was low, filled with sadness but also strength. For a moment, Mr. David remembered his own past. Years ago, before he became wealthy, he too had worked endless nights. He had not cleaned floors, but he had spent sleepless hours building his business from nothing. The hunger in his stomach and the fire in his chest were things he had tried to forget. But now, watching this woman, those memories returned. Why does she look so much like I did years ago? He wondered. Sarah, completely unaware, moved from one desk to another. At one point, she bent down to pick up a stack of papers that had fallen. As she lifted them, she winced in pain. Her back hurt, but she didn't stop. She placed the papers neatly and whispered to herself, "Just a little more, Sarah. Just a little more." Her words reached him like a whisper in the silence. He realized this woman was not lazy, she was exhausted from carrying a weight bigger than herself. The CEO slowly stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. He wanted to see her face clearly. Under the bright office lights, her eyes looked tired, her cheeks pale, but there was something honest and pure about her expression. It was not the face of someone careless, it was the face of someone who had been fighting battles alone. For the first time in years, Mr. David hesitated. Should he wake her earlier? Should he call her out now and remind her of her duties? His usual self would have shouted, would have demanded answers. But tonight, he simply stayed quiet. Instead of anger, curiosity filled his mind. He wanted to know why she was here. Why did she push herself so much? Why was she risking her job just for a few minutes of sleep? The more he watched, the more questions grew. When Sarah finally moved to the big conference room, she stopped for a moment and stretched her arms. She looked at the city lights outside the window, her eyes reflecting a kind of longing. For a second, she seemed far away, maybe imagining a better life, maybe praying for one. Mr. David, standing a few steps behind, saw that look. And it unsettled him. He had seen ambition in many eyes before, but her eyes held something different. They carried pain, sacrifice, and silent strength. Sarah sighed softly and whispered, "Mama, I hope you're feeling better tonight, and little brother, study hard, one day things will change, I promise." She didn't know anyone was listening. But those words fell into the CEO's heart like drops of rain on dry ground. Now he understood, this was not just about work. This woman was carrying her family's future on her shoulders. Mr. David stayed hidden until Sarah finally gathered her things. She cleaned the last corner, arranged her tools, and walked slowly toward the exit. Every step showed her exhaustion, but also her determination. When she was gone, the CEO walked into the room she had just cleaned. The air still smelled of soap and freshness. On the desk, he noticed something she had done. She had carefully arranged files that even his managers often left messy. She had done more than her duty, even while tired. He stood there for a long moment, lost in thought. This woman, she is not ordinary. There is a story behind her eyes. I need to know it. The CEO, who never cared about cleaners or small workers, had suddenly found his attention captured. For the first time in years, he decided to investigate someone's life, not as a boss, but as a human being. That night, he left the office with his mind full of questions. Who was she? What was her story? And why did her silent struggle touch him so deeply? Sarah had no idea that the most powerful man in the building had been right behind her. She had no idea that her life was about to change, that her smallest mistake, falling asleep at work, had opened a new path for her future. The Watcher had seen her. The Watcher was curious. And soon, the Watcher would step into her world. The next morning, the city woke up as usual, but Sarah's heart carried a hidden fear. She kept remembering how she had fallen asleep at work the night before. Even though she had woken up quickly and finished her duties, she worried. What if someone saw me? What if I lose this job? How will I buy Mama's medicine then? She tied her hair back, wore her faded uniform, and walked into the company building as she always did. She forced a smile for the security guard, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. She told herself, "Stay strong, Sarah. No one noticed. It was just a few minutes. Keep working hard." But what Sarah didn't know was that someone had noticed. Someone very important. Mr. David sat in his corner office on the top floor. He had not slept well. All night, her image had stayed in his mind, her tired face, her whispered words about her mother and brother, the way she still worked with care despite her exhaustion. For years, he had looked at employees as numbers, not people. But now, for the first time in a long time, he felt a pull to know more. Who was this cleaner? Why did she live like this? Why did her struggle remind him of his own past? He picked up the phone and called the HR department. His voice was calm but firm. "Bring me the file of the night cleaner. The one named Sarah." Within minutes, the file lay on his desk. Mr. David opened it slowly. Inside, he found only a few details. Name, Sarah Khan. Age, 26. Position, cleaner. Salary, very low, just enough for survival. Records, never late, never absent, never complained. There were no warnings, no mistakes, no complaints from anyone. In fact, the notes from her supervisor said she was quiet, hardworking, honest. Mr. David leaned back in his chair. Most people with such a small salary often found excuses or complained. But Sarah had carried on silently for years, never asking for more. He tapped his fingers on the desk, deep in thought. Why would someone work this hard for so little? Unless she has no choice. The answer came back to him, her whispered words the night before about her sick mother and younger brother. Suddenly, the puzzle started to make sense. But Mr. David was not satisfied with papers. He wanted to see more. He wanted to know the truth of her life, not just her file. That evening, when Sarah finished her cleaning shift, she walked out of the building with her small bag. She did not notice the black car parked across the street, its windows darkened. Inside sat Mr. David, silently watching. He followed her from a distance. Sarah walked quickly, not wasting money on transport. She stopped at a small pharmacy, bought a packet of medicine, and placed it carefully in her bag. Then she bought some bread and milk from a local shop before continuing toward a quiet street on the poorer side of town. Mr. David's eyes followed her every step. She did not enter a fancy apartment. Instead, she stopped in front of a small, broken house. The paint was peeling, the roof looked old, and the windows had cracks. It was nothing like the shining buildings of his company. She pushed the door open and went inside. Through the half-open window, Mr. David saw what she did next. Sarah knelt beside an old woman lying on a thin bed. She gently gave her the medicine and helped her drink water. Then she sat beside her, stroking her hair. "Don't worry, Mama. I got your medicine today. You'll feel better soon," she whispered with a soft smile. Her mother coughed weakly but smiled back. "You work too much, Sarah. You're tiring yourself." But Sarah shook her head. "No, Mama. I'm strong. As long as you and my brother are fine, I can handle it." Later, her younger brother, maybe 12 years old, came to her with a school notebook. "Sarah, can you help me with my homework?" he asked. Even though she was exhausted, Sarah smiled and nodded. She sat with him, explaining the lessons gently, encouraging him to study hard. She spoke to him like a parent, not just a sister. Mr. David watched from his car. For a long time, he remained silent. The scene touched something deep inside him. He remembered his own childhood, his mother struggling to raise him alone, the nights he studied under a weak lamp while she worked endlessly. He had promised himself he would never be poor again. But in his rise to power, he had forgotten the pain of ordinary people. Now, through Sarah, those memories came rushing back. He realized she was not careless. She was a fighter, carrying 2 lives on her shoulders. The sleep she took at work was not laziness, it was exhaustion born from sacrifice. Mr. David exhaled slowly. "This woman is different," he thought. "She is honest, hardworking, and stronger than most of the managers in my office." That night, as Sarah sat inside her small home, laughing softly with her brother, she felt thankful that no one at work had noticed her mistake. She had no idea that her life had already been noticed. She did not know that the man who owned her workplace, the CEO himself, was sitting outside in his car, watching her life with new respect. And she did not know that soon, her world was going to change forever. The days passed, but Mr. David's thoughts did not rest. He was a man who usually moved on quickly from small matters. But Sarah was not a small matter anymore. She was a question in his mind, a story he had not yet finished reading. Each night, while she cleaned the offices, Mr. David sometimes walked the halls silently, pretending to check on things. But in truth, he was observing her. He saw the way she worked without complaining, the way she carefully arranged even the smallest files, and the way she smiled politely to others despite her tiredness. The more he watched, the more respect grew in his heart. Yet, he still wanted to know everything, the truth behind her struggle. One evening, after finishing a late meeting, Mr. David decided to follow her again. He wanted to see if what he had witnessed earlier was her daily life or just one moment of sacrifice. Sarah left the building quietly with her small bag. The streets were busy, but she walked quickly, her steps showing a mix of urgency and habit. She stopped at the pharmacy once more, buying medicine. She did not waste a single coin on anything extra. Every purchase had a purpose. Then she moved toward her neighborhood. Mr. David followed in his car, careful not to be noticed. When she entered her small house, the CEO waited for a while before stepping out of his car. He stood near the gate, hidden by the shadows, and looked inside through the cracked window. What he saw made his heart tighten. The house was even poorer than he had imagined. The walls were peeling, the furniture old and broken. A small bulb hung from the ceiling, giving just enough light for the room. But inside that small, broken place lived something far more valuable than wealth: love. Sarah's mother lay on the bed, coughing softly. Sarah hurried to her side, helping her sit up, giving her medicine, and gently patting her back until the cough settled. Her face was full of care, her hands moving with patience. Afterward, she brought a glass of warm milk to her younger brother, who sat at a small table doing his homework. He looked up and smiled at her. "Did you finish work, Sarah?" She smiled back, though her face was pale with exhaustion. "Yes, little one. Now finish your studies. One day you'll be the one helping Mama." Her brother nodded eagerly, and Sarah sat beside him, explaining his math problems with calmness. Even though her eyes looked heavy, her voice stayed steady. She encouraged him with words like, "You are smart. You will do better than me one day." Mr. David stood outside, watching silently. He had seen expensive boardrooms, glittering parties, and successful people all his life. But he had never seen such quiet strength inside such poverty. He remembered his own childhood. He had once lived in a small house too. His mother had struggled, working day and night to give him a future. Back then, he had promised himself he would never let poverty control him again. But in becoming powerful, he had forgotten the beauty of sacrifice, the strength of love. Now, looking at Sarah, he felt as if life was showing him a mirror. As the night grew darker, Sarah finally sat by the window, alone. She looked up at the stars and whispered softly, "God, I'm tired. But please give me strength. I can't stop now. My family needs me." Her voice cracked as tears filled her eyes. She quickly wiped them away before her brother could see. She did not want him to think she was weak. Mr. David turned away, his chest heavy with emotions he had not felt in years. He had always believed that power came from money and control. But now he saw a different kind of power, one that came from sacrifice, honesty, and silent endurance. He walked back to his car, his mind filled with questions. Why has no one noticed her? Why is someone so hardworking left in the shadows, while so many lazy people sit in higher positions? That night, Mr. David made a decision. He would no longer remain just an observer. He needed to test her, to see if her honesty matched her hard work. If she passed his test, he knew she deserved more than just a cleaner's life. Sarah, however, remained unaware of everything. To her, life was still the same, a struggle for survival, a fight to keep her family alive. She had no idea that the man who owned the company, the man everyone feared, had been standing just outside her broken home, learning her truth. And she had no idea that soon, her honesty would be tested in a way that could change her destiny forever. The next morning, the office was buzzing with activity. Employees hurried through the halls, holding files and coffee cups, unaware of the silent plan forming inside the CEO's mind. Mr. David sat in his office, staring at the city skyline, his thoughts still heavy with what he had seen the night before. Sarah's life had opened his eyes. Her strength, her honesty with her family, her endless sacrifice, it was rare. But Mr. David had lived long enough to know that people can hide behind masks. He needed to be sure. If Sarah was truly as honest as she seemed, she deserved a chance. If not, she would remain just another worker. That evening, as most of the employees left, Sarah entered the office quietly with her cleaning tools. She was unaware that her biggest test was about to begin. Mr. David purposely left something valuable in one of the offices, a watch. But this was not just any watch. It was gold, expensive, worth more than Sarah's entire year of salary. He placed it carefully on the desk, half hidden but still visible, before walking away silently. From his hidden corner, he waited. Sarah entered the office a few minutes later. She was tired, as usual, but she began her work with steady hands. She dusted the shelves, wiped the glass, and arranged the chairs neatly. As she moved toward the desk, her eyes caught the shining watch. She stopped. Her tired face reflected in the polished surface of the gold. For a moment, her hands trembled. She picked it up gently, staring at it in silence. The watch looked so heavy, so rich. She imagined how many medicines she could buy for her mother, how many books she could give her brother, how many nights of hunger she could erase. Her heart beat faster. Temptation whispered in her ear, "No one will know. Just take it. This could change everything." But then another voice, her own voice, spoke louder. "Sarah, this is not yours. You have survived this long with honesty. Don't break your dignity for gold." Slowly, she placed the watch back on the desk. She looked around for a piece of paper and wrote a small note in her simple handwriting. "Sir, you left this here. Please keep it safe." She placed the note on top of the watch, then covered it with a folder so it would not fall. Her eyes softened as she whispered, "One day, I will earn with my own hands. Not by stealing." She finished cleaning the room and walked out, never looking back. From the shadows, Mr. David's eyes widened. His heart, which rarely felt emotions, suddenly felt warm. She had passed the test. He had seen many people in his life who would betray for less, who would take shortcuts when tempted. But Sarah had chosen honesty over desperation. For the first time in many years, Mr. David smiled. The next day, he called the watchmaker to check the watch. "Untouched," the man said. That confirmed what he already knew. Sarah was not just hardworking, she was truly honest. But Mr. David didn't reveal himself yet. He wanted to see more. He wanted to test her strength one final time, not through temptation but through opportunity. Meanwhile, Sarah returned home that night with her usual routine. She bought medicine, checked on her mother, and helped her brother with schoolwork. She felt tired, but her heart was light. She had faced temptation and defeated it. To her, it was nothing more than a small moment of honesty. She didn't know someone had been watching, and that her decision had been far bigger than she could imagine. Days passed, and Sarah continued her work. But inside Mr. David's mind, a decision was growing stronger. He had seen enough of her life, her sacrifices, and her character. Now, he was ready to step forward. The time had come to stop watching from the shadows. The time had come to change her destiny. Sarah, however, had no idea. She still believed she was just a cleaner, just another invisible worker in a giant company. She didn't know that her honesty had been noticed, that her struggle had touched the heart of a man who had power to rewrite her entire future. Her test was over. And now, the reward was waiting. The morning sun spread golden light across the tall company building. Inside, everything looked normal, employees rushing to their desks, managers holding files, and assistants whispering about schedules. But for one person, this day was not ordinary. Sarah, dressed in her faded uniform, walked in with her cleaning tools as usual. Her face showed the same tiredness, but her heart carried determination. She reminded herself, "No matter how hard it gets, Sarah, you must keep going. Mama and your brother need you." She had no idea that today her life would take a turn she never imagined. In his office, Mr. David sat silently, watching the morning unfold. His eyes were sharper than ever, but there was warmth in them too. He had tested Sarah's honesty, he had seen her sacrifices, and he had witnessed her endless strength. Now, it was time to act. He pressed the intercom. "Send Sarah, the cleaner, to my office," he ordered. The HR manager looked surprised but obeyed. A few minutes later, a guard appeared near Sarah and said, "The CEO wants to see you." Sarah froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. She thought instantly of her mistake, the night she had fallen asleep at work. Oh no, He found out. I will lose this job. What will happen to Mama now? Her hands trembled as she followed the guard. Each step toward the CEO's office felt heavier than the last. When she finally stood in front of the large wooden doors, she took a deep breath. Inside, Mr. David sat behind his desk, his eyes fixed on her. "Come in, Sarah," he said firmly. She entered quietly, lowering her gaze. "Sir, if I made a mistake, please forgive me. Don't take my job. I need it. My family." Mr. David raised his hand gently. "Sit down." Sarah obeyed, her heart racing. There was silence for a moment. Then Mr. David spoke slowly. "Sarah, do you know why I called you here?" She shook her head nervously. "No, sir." He leaned forward. "Because I have been watching you. I saw you the night you fell asleep while cleaning." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. She quickly lowered her head in shame. "I am sorry, sir. I was tired. It will never happen again. Please don't fire me." But instead of anger, Mr. David's voice softened. "Do you know what else I saw? I saw a woman who works harder than anyone else in this building. I saw someone who sacrifices every day for her family. I saw honesty, even when temptation could have changed everything." Sarah looked up, confused. "Sir, I don't understand." Mr. David smiled slightly. "You are not going to lose your job, Sarah. From today, you will no longer work as a cleaner." Her lips parted in shock. "What do you mean?" "You will work as my personal assistant," he said. "You will have a proper salary, enough to take care of your mother and brother. And I will make sure your brother's education is fully supported. As for your mother, the company will cover her medical treatment." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. She shook her head in disbelief. "Sir, this can't be real. I don't deserve this." Mr. David's voice grew firm but kind. "You deserve more than this, Sarah. You have lived with honesty and strength. That is rare. People like you should be lifted, not ignored." For the first time, Sarah let the tears flow freely. She covered her face with her hands, crying softly. All the years of struggle, all the nights of exhaustion, all the sacrifices, suddenly, they didn't feel wasted. Mr. David stood and walked closer. "You reminded me of something I had forgotten. I, too, once came from nothing. I built my life with hard work, but I forgot the value of sacrifice. Watching you reminded me of my own journey. You opened my eyes, Sarah." Sarah looked up at him, still crying. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." Her voice shook, but it carried more gratitude than words could hold. From that day forward, Sarah's life changed. She no longer wore the uniform of a cleaner. Instead, she entered the office with respect, carrying new responsibilities and a new hope. She worked closely with Mr. David, learning skills, handling important tasks, and slowly building a future she had once thought impossible. At home, her mother's health improved with proper treatment. Her younger brother studied harder, proud of his sister's strength. Their small house slowly turned into a home filled with light, not just struggle. Sarah never forgot her past. She still worked with the same humility, the same dedication. But now she carried hope too. She understood that honesty and patience, though slow, always bring reward in the end. And Mr. David? He had changed as well. The stone-hearted CEO now carried a softer side, hidden from most but clear to Sarah. In her struggle, he had found inspiration. In her honesty, he had found faith again in humanity. One night, as Sarah sat by the window, watching the stars, she whispered, "Thank you, God. You gave me more than I ever asked for." Her tears that night were not of pain, but of gratitude. The tired cleaner was no longer invisible. She had become a story of strength, honesty, and hope, a story that would live forever in the hearts of those who heard it.